Yay, welcome to my favorite day of the week because I get to spend it with you and I love these live events.
Yeah.
But there is something that is evolving and we've kind of talked about it in the past and I want to get into it a little bit more because most people think that the financial system is built on money, but it's not. I mean, really, what's the difference between this or that? Well, here's the monopoly money. You just won't agree to work for it. You'll agree to work for this. But frankly, there's no different. The real reality is that the financial system is built on belief that the work will pay off, belief that life will get better, and belief that the people in charge know what they're doing. I don't know about that. But for a long time, people actually did believe it because of the way they transitioned us from the one system to the new. And then, of course, there's that old story, the emperor's new clothes, which I think fits what we're looking at here really well. Because in the story, everyone pretended that the emperor was wearing beautiful clothes because they were too afraid really, to say the truth. But then, of course, a child spoke up. And once the child said it, everyone could see it. And that's the story that really we need to talk about today, because every system depends on the next generation believing this sacrifice is worth it. And frankly, the moment the young stop believing in upward mobility, that they can make a difference in their standard of living, well, then the psychological foundation of the system kind of cracks, right? So let's just take a look at what's going on here, because you've got the people on the Fed, the FOMC meeting minutes, and they come out and says repeated supply shocks test the inflation anchor. Well, do you know who that inflation anchor or what that inflation anchor is supposed to be?
Is it the consumer confidence?
It is. It's the confidence and the public belief that the Federal Reserve is actually independent and can control inflation. Or what do they talk? They talk about fighting inflation.
Yeah.
But it's that belief that became the anchor for the entire financial system. If prices rose, the Fed would fix it because they would raise the prices, or raise interest rates, create deflation, and that would control the interest rate again. If the economy slowed, well, what'd they do? They lowered interest rates and printed a whole lot of free money. So, the emperor looked strong, like he had clothes on. Right? Confident, in control. But the system only worked as long as the people believed collectively that the clothes were real. And as always, every belief system is eventually tested. And people started asking a really dangerous question, which was, what if the people in charge are no longer in control? We've seen a lot of pushback on the central banks being independent and in control. But what the people were told was that inflation was transitory or temporary. But inflation proved sticky.
Right.
And after all the money printing in 2020, inflation expectations ratcheted up to new, higher, and much more volatile expectation range. And with the higher highs and the higher lows, technically, this chart could be showing us that fragile breakdown in central bank control. Can you see that trading range before 2020 on this chart, right? This is really critical because, frankly, look at that higher range, a whole lot more volatility and that massive breakout.
Yeah, that's like a pattern change, right? A pattern interrupt when you see that.
Exactly. But that you don't even really need to know what that means. But what you do need to see is that there was a breakout. So is this just a temporary surge?
Nope.
Nope. Nope. It definitely isn't. I think this really is about the Federal Reserve and global central banks losing control because people stop trusting those people in charge. And once trust begins to weaken, that belief, that weakens too. So let's take a look because I've shown you this before. Public trust collapses. Look at that trust in government down to 17% from almost 80% of Americans that trusted the government in the 60s. You know, they trusted them to do the right thing. But today, what do we have? It's near the historic lows. And that's just not politics.
Right.
That's actual legitimacy. People are starting to feel like the system no longer works for them. Shocking.
Right. Well, and again, I think it ties into how many times can people be lied to when they don't know the truth, but when the truth starts to come out, I think that also has that public confidence piece. As it goes down, the trust in the government goes down, those inflation expectations spiking up. I think it all correlates to one thing, which is what happens at the end of a currency's life cycle.
Yeah, and that is such a good point because that's really where we are. And frankly, once that trust breaks at the top, well, people begin to feel it in everyday life. And here's what we're looking at now. Americans' economic confidence drops. Shocking. They invest when they believe tomorrow will be better. They can tighten their belts when they think that tomorrow will be better. But when hope disappears, the system starts slowing down from the inside out. So Americans are becoming much more pessimistic about the economy. Confidence has fallen sharply. Look at this, from a plus 40 in 2020 to a minus 38 today. That's a huge shift. People may not understand every economic chart, but they understand this. Things feel harder.
Yeah.
They feel more expensive. They feel more uncertain. I mean, when you have to have people taking out loans for easy payments to feed their family, the promises don't match reality, and people are starting to realize that. And when people lose confidence in the future, they start expecting things to get worse. And that's where we are right now. Today, most Americans believe that economic conditions are getting worse. Shockingly, not better. That matters because economies are emotional systems. People spend when they feel hopeful, and nowhere is that feeling stronger than in the job market, where more Americans now believe that it is a bad time to find a quality job, especially younger workers. For generations, people were told, go to school, work hard, play by these rules, and you'll move upward. That was the deal. That was the American dream. But now something really different, I'm getting chills, is really happening. The quiet part. Well, let's see. What are they saying out loud these days? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I'm sorry.
No,
Did you?
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, that's what they would call a person. Yeah.
Well, lower value human capital. And this is by Stanchart CEO, a bank's CEO, a major bank. Think about that phrase for a minute.
Right.
Not people, not families,
Oh.
not communities, human capital, an evil that they must deal with.
Yeah. And I think, we've talked about it before too. What a lot of people need to realize is the hours of their life that they're giving for this corporate debt. That's all this is corporate debt. It's your energy, it's your lifespan, it's something you'll never get back. And they're going to say that it's lower value human capital opposed to higher value AI capital. I don't.
Right, because
Yeah.
AI is a lot cheaper, right? AI doesn't breathe air. AI doesn't eat food. It does consume water and it does
Energy,
consume
yeah.
energy.
Yeah.
But is this the moment that many people realize something, that the system and not see them as citizens anymore? Do you think
Yeah.
that the system, all of these tech giants just kind of see them as costs?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
shocking. And then the children said what everyone else could finally see. The emperor has no clothes. In the old story, this is the moment that breaks that spell. And suddenly everyone sees the truth where they were too afraid to admit. We're looking at these markets melting up.
Yeah.
Right? No matter what's going on, no matter what war, no matter what inflation, no matter how many protests, no matter what, we have markets that just keep marching higher.
Right. Yeah. It's like a part of what happens again in that currency life cycle at the very end. And I do have a question for you too about the melting up of the market. You know, on the global stage, the US dollar is melting up as well, much stronger against these other currencies. And when we look at the purchasing power of the dollar, we've officially dropped into 2.9 cents on the Fred chart.
They went back and forth on the Fred. You saw the 2.9 cents? I saw it. And then when I went to copy it over the weekend while I was working, it was back at 0.3. I don't think they want to break it down there, but you saw it and I saw it.
Yeah, it was on there at 2.9 cents. So it makes me wonder too, if the dollar has, it's lost 97% of its purchasing power officially.
So it's worse than that. But
if the dollar has lost that much purchasing power, but it's so strong against these other currencies, how much purchasing power have all those other currencies lost?
Exactly. That is such a good point. And it's something that I try and show when I bring up those charts against, I use xe.com, but you can use any currency converter and you just go in and you put the dollar against that currency, the spot silver contract against that currency, and the spot gold contract against that currency. And 100% of the time, short term and long term, it looks quite honestly, spot silver and spot gold always 100% beat out the US dollar, that spot contract against that currency. But that is the point, right? Yeah. They try to lull you in and say, "Oh, the emperor has closed," because after all, look at how strong the dollar is against the yuan or the euro, or take your pick. It doesn't matter. But it's all relative, right?
Exactly.
And to your point, you're absolutely right. What that really is showing you is that those other currencies are even more weak. And I wonder, is that moment happening like right now, especially with younger generations?
Yeah.
Right? The young are no longer quietly just accepting the story and accepting the lie. I really was amazed when I saw this. Graduates actually boo commencement speech about AI. Can you believe that? Why did they do that? Because many young people no longer hear innovation, they hear replacement. Go get your degree in engineering, learn how to write code. Yeah, that's not working out so well. They hear fewer opportunities. They hear less stability. They hear a future becoming smaller. instead of larger. I was born in 54. The world was my oyster. It was right after World War II. We had so much room to take on debt and to create everything that we created. But these kids that are graduating today, the numbers really kind of help explain why we have this attitude about it. Because look at this. These are the young college graduates, and those jobs just are not there. Young worker unemployment is rising again, especially for the younger college graduates, right?
Yeah.
It's important because upward mobility is the foundation of the American dream and social stability here in the US. So if younger people believe that life will improve, they can be patient. You were patient because you saw the dream could come true. Now you're in a better place,
Right.
right? Because you're here. But if they believe that ladder to upward mobility is disappearing, history shows something really dangerous that's beginning to happen. And we are seeing it because every stable society depends on one thing, and that is the next generation believing the sacrifice is worth it. Parents sacrifice for children, workers sacrifice for retirement, students sacrifice for opportunity. But frankly, the moment the young stop believing in upward mobility, the psychological foundation of the very system is cracking. It begins to crack. And once that belief breaks, well, change comes really fast. So what happens when people stop trusting the system, stop trusting their upward mobility? They begin looking for something outside of that system. No, actually, gold and silver used to be the very system, right? And historically, that's silver. But historically, gold represents independence from governments and from central banks and from paper promises and from all of that debt. This is savings. So it's not really about investing to watch those numbers go up. Will they? Of course they will. Right. But it's more about the currency going down. Really, this is about trust, or probably more accurately, that loss of trust. And that's everything. Yeah. That really is. And that brings us back to the very beginning, which frankly, every fiat financial system survives on confidence. Every single confidence game survives on belief, and every belief system collapses the moment that people see the truths. The emperor's clothes were never the real power or the real story. The belief was. So where does this leave us? Quite honestly, history shows that systems rarely collapse all at once. And ours have been collapsing actually pretty significantly since 2008. I said it then, yeah. I'll say it now. That's when the system died. And they had to scramble to come up with a new digital system. And I think somewhere you've got the physical representation of Bitcoin, which is supposed to look like that.
They try real hard.
But look, they have to have people that have confidence and trust it. And I don't personally trust it. Then they lose hope. And finally, they stop participating in the illusion. And I think that that's really where we are. That's the real danger that's facing every single fiat system. So when you say the dollar is stronger against this currency, and we know that it's taking 4 easy payments to feed a family, it's not just the inflation.
Right.
And it's not just this debt, which we've now passed 100%. I mean, that's such a joke. It's not even a recession. This is so much bigger. What we have ahead of us is so much bigger than just a recession. The real danger is when the next generation no longer believes that the sacrifice is worth it. And it looks like we have approached that, because once belief disappears, those emperor's clothes,
Yeah.
they disappear right with it, don't they? And that brings us back to the beginning. You know, financial systems are not built on paper. They're not built on digital dollars. They're not even built on gold. They're built on confidence. Gold does not require confidence because it is the only financial asset that runs no counterparty risk. But frankly, confidence is built on trust. And today, do you see it? That trust is really breaking. And that means that this is not just a financial moment, it's a sovereignty moment.
Yeah.
That makes it much, much bigger. Because when the system becomes unstable, well, people have two choices. They can become more dependent on the system. Just, ooh, look at those numbers. That stock market just keeps going up, going up, going. It'll go to the sky.
Yeah.
Except that's never the way that it works. Or you can become more sovereign, more independent, which you guys know, this is what we believe in at Zang International. Not from fear. You don't do anything from fear, but from clarity. That's why we focus on the sound money strategies and why it's so important that you create that local community and surety in food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. By surrounding yourself with a community to support that surety, you put yourself in the best possible position. Resilience, because true wealth is not just in what you own, it's how resilient you are when the world changes around you. The emperor's power was never the clothes, it was the belief. And how many times can you be lied to when you do not know the truth? And frankly, history changes the very moment when people see the truth. So we are very close, I think, to a revolution, and I'd like to be part of steering it.
Yeah.
Toward redeemable gold sound money in the system so that the public has the power of the purse. Did you see recently how much money has been spent on these midterm elections?
Oh, no, I didn't even look at that.
Oh my God. I think the most in history, don't hold me to this. I obviously don't have those numbers right in front of me, but I think that 120 million was spent on some of these midterm elections.
Wow.
120. You've got people that can't feed their family, but let's spend this on getting somebody elected that isn't going to listen to us anyway. We have to get more involved and take our power back.
Very true.
Do you want to add anything to it, or do you want to just go to questions?
Well, I think, that was...
I'm sorry, I feel really strongly about this because I think I can see this. Can you guys see the revolution that's evolving?
I was going to say, first of all, that was an amazing breakdown that you did, and it's powerful, very, very true. The thing about it is, we've been talking about that consumer confidence piece going down. It all ties together.
Yes, it
And
does.
none of this is compartmentalized into, well, if one domino falls, the rest are going to be okay. It's all part of this historical timeline that Lynette has been talking about for for such a long time. You've been
decades.
I wasn't going to say decades, but okay.
Look, I don't hide my age.
But you really have, and you've been
Mhm.
studying it on some level for nearly your entire life.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's true.
so when we see how history plays out, why would anybody think that in the United States maybe it would be any different than it's been anywhere else? Why do people have that perception of that?
You know, what I've found over the years is no matter, and I could put this wherever you are in the world, yes, all of this could happen all around me, but just not where I am.
Right.
And I think it's that bias, that normalcy bias. I
Right.
really do think that it is. And US exceptionalism. What a huge benefit and advantage that we had, that we're the country that could print the money to repay our debts. What if you could do that?
Right. Yeah. Anybody would love to be able to say, well, it doesn't matter because we can just keep printing and keep rolling that debt over, and there's no consequences on the federal level for them to do that. If you and me said we're not going to pay our debt and we're just going to keep trying to roll it over, well, we'd be in trouble.
If we could do this, that's called counterfeiting.
Yeah.
But isn't this really counterfeiting this and this?
Wow. That's a great point, because they've completely taken these out of that system, and they did it because they had to. They could not counterfeit and continue to print trillions upon trillions of dollars of that corporate debt if they were bound by checks and balances, the real checks and balances.
We've
of
got to
sound money.
do that again, don't we?
Yeah. It's the
We
only
have
way.
to.
Yeah.
Do we, you know, what choice do we have, really? You know, I'm so excited because one of my great nieces just had a fabulous new baby. Well, the world that child was just born into, as exciting as it is, and it really is exciting. I'm so happy for them. But I also see why, and for your son, for your children and grandchildren, I can see why this battle is so critically important. Because what choices will they have?
Right. Especially if they get their, digital currency wishes and everything's contractually owned by the banks.
Somebody else,
Yeah,
right?
somebody
Not
else.
you.
Not you guys.
We have to stop it, and we can. If we come together, there's way more of us.
Yeah.
So here's a question from one of Riley's leads. What does Lynette think about the idea that gold eagles could be exempt from confiscation while gold bars would be more likely to be targeted? If gold were revalued against you, okay, so there's two questions. We'll do the first one. You know, our central bank, actually globally, they've been robbing from us since the day you were born. Do yourself a favor, go into the Federal Reserve Education Department, FRED, and put in there the purchasing power of the consumer dollar. And in the search bar, put the date of your birth. And you will see that since the day you were born, you have been robbed. So could they do it? Well, sure, they can do anything they want.
Yeah.
But are they likely to? No, not really. And tell me why the bullion that you can hold in the IRA has a $50 face value on it.
Right.
Right? Why does it have that $50 face value on it? Because the US official price is $42.22.
Yep.
Exactly. So will they revalue? It kind of takes us into the next one. Here's how I determine it. I really don't see gold eagles being exempt from confiscation. I could be wrong. That is way above my pay grade. But if I can hold it inside of an IRA, since most US citizens, if they own gold, that's where they hold them. It makes it just that much easier to sweep away. Now, I don't personally think that they would do it and leave $50 there. If you paid $5,000 for this coin, you would be very upset if all you got was for $50.
Yeah.
Right. So chances are, since they want your easy cooperation and they want you to volunteer, wherever spot happens to be, let's just say it happens to be $10,000 when they decide to do an overt confiscation, my bet is that they will pay you a premium, maybe $12 or even $15,000.
Right.
And most people not understanding that this stuff really has no value, it's just a con game, right? Would go and they'd look at the spot gold and spot silver contracts and go, oh, look it, that's what gold is doing. That's how much it's worth. They'll believe the lie. I don't know why, but they do.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't argue probably, right? If, hey, gold is only worth $10,000 and they're willing to pay me $12,000 or $15,000 for rock and roll hoochie coo. But think about the person that is sitting with pre-33s and think about how much they might have paid for 1 ounce of gold, upwards to what, 18 million? Do you know what the most expensive gold coin went for? I don't know.
It was like 30 something million for
30
that.
something million
For
for
that St. Gaudens,
1 ounce of gold. 1 ounce of gold. Are they turning it in for $12,000 or $15,000? And that's the category that you cannot hold inside of an IRA.
Right.
It is a different classification. That's what I want. So is it possible? Of course, anything is possible. Governments can do anything that they want. Is it likely? I don't think it's very likely. I think that the coins as well as the bars, if it's new stuff and it's just classified as monetary gold and you can hold it in the IRA, just about the right size to do a big sweep. That's why personally, I only own the pre-33s because that is in that other classification. And that's the classification that I want to be in because I want the kind of gold that not only can I hold legally, but also that I can use in the normal marketplace like my uncle had.
Yeah.
So if gold were revalued against U.S. debt, would it be based on the official 40 trillion debt figure or a much larger total debt estimate? It would be whatever it is that they're admitting to. There's so much stuff that's done off balance sheet, who knows? But when I did the calculation, I think the global calculation came out to, I don't know, $38,000 an ounce.
Yeah.
But if just based upon how much gold the U.S. has, and we'll assume that that's accurate, because I don't know otherwise, and the debt levels that they admit to, that puts the revaluation at about $135,000 an ounce. I will tell you that I think that this will be done in a globally coordinated fashion. Do you have a different opinion of that? In other words, that all the central banks get together and say, okay, we're going to do this overnight revaluation on blank date. I'm not going to give you a date because then somebody's going to say on this date, Lynette said they're going to revalue, and I can't do that. But do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. It's interesting too, because you talk about, or first thing that you had said about IRA gold, a lot of times it's a little bit of like a revealing thing to people that I talk to, that gold is technically not theirs. It's being held by a company and they are the beneficial owner of it. So in theory, yes, if they ask for it back or if they say, hey, I want the dollar value for it, they can get that.
Right.
But I ask people all the time, if you were to go to the depository where this gold is being held, if you just drive there today on a random afternoon and say, hey, I'm here to get my gold, they're going to say, I'm sorry, who are you? And do you have the okay from your IRA company to do that? Oh, we need that first, right? So it's kind of something to think about with that. But you're right, it's a financial commodity. It's what's legally identified as, actually, bullion. And so, yeah, being in that completely separate asset class, it's a different set of rules. Guys, that's what it comes down to. There's sometimes you play by one set of rules if you're playing baseball, but if you're playing hockey, it's not the same set of rules. Right. So that's what I would consider with that. But for the revaluation, I agree 100%. It has to be a global coordinated revaluation because this is a global financial issue. To go back to what we were talking about with, if the dollar is so strong against the Turkish lira, for example, but there's such little purchasing power left in the dollar, how bad a shape is the lira in? And do you think that they're going to be able to not revalue their gold supplies over that? You know, to try and fix that issue? Because when they want to change what's going on with the financial system, the change can't, I don't think it can just be localized to the United States.
Right.
It can't.
Because, if we did the revaluation, then after the revaluation, other countries that haven't done it, we would get an influx, right? So we have to really, it has to be a globally coordinated effort, or it would create a whole lot of imbalance. And I don't want them, I think that they don't want anywhere for us to run.
Yeah. And I think too, as far as, you know, we could talk about different governments and this and that, but I think on the playing field of the world banks, those central banks, I don't see why they wouldn't all get together to coordinate, because that's what their entire purpose is, to have monetary policy. And really it's all dictated by the BIS anyway, which is the central bank of the central banks. So if you've got one order coming down from the BIS, which they've done, they've put out tons of studies on how they, you know, could use these different assets to weight currency against. Yeah, I don't see any reason why there would only be the United States revaluing the gold. It doesn't make any
heck
sense.
no.
Yeah.
And to your earlier point, you know, seeing the dollar get weaker or stronger against another currency, it really doesn't matter unless you happen to be traveling to that current country. Then, you know, then it kind of matters, except every single currency is losing its purchasing power value. Every single one is being inflated away. So, okie doke, let's go to Wolf 728. Hi, Lynette. In a crash, would any loans you have out, including mortgage, go to zero? Well, historically, that would be no, they're not going to go to zero, which is why we put enough gold in place today to make sure that when they do that overnight revaluation, they've got to lop off zeros when it becomes too apparent, then you will have the ability to just get all those dollars and boom, pay it off just like that. Yeah. We have, I don't know how long we're going to have, so you can't hold me to this, but historically we have about a 9-month window. So part of the whole sound money strategy is getting in, and you can speak to this probably as well or even better than me, because you work with it more than I do these days. But it is a holistic approach from the strategy. You want to go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, right, like you said, historically, no, the debt doesn't go to zero. Banks will do what's called restructuring of their debt.
And the loans.
And the loans, right, yeah. And so when, I'm sorry, I should have said our debt, they do a restructuring of our debt, which is, you know, just loans on their balance sheet. But when they do that restructuring, the question really is, do you think that they restructure it to be in our favor or in their favor?
Who writes the contracts?
The banks.
That's right.
Yeah, so doing that restructuring, it actually puts people most likely in a way worse position. So that's why our strategy is really designed to make sure you can extinguish any fixed rate debt that you have when they do that overnight revaluation of the gold, because you're going to want to make sure you have no liability held with anybody else. Again, this gold, physical, tangible gold held in your possession is the only asset with zero counterparty risk.
Yep. So
we want to eliminate any other possible counterparty risk. So yeah, it wouldn't go to zero. No, I'd actually arguably just get in a worse position if you are still holding that debt.
Yep, exactly. So we want to make sure that you are in the best possible position to weather the storm. That's why local community too, and
Yeah.
creating surety in those. You can't live without food. You can't live without water. You can live without gold and silver, right? But what gold and silver are is universal money that'll make sure that you be able to eat, right?
Get that
Because
food and water and shelter.
exactly. Because if I have strawberries, they have a shelf life, right?
Yeah.
So there's only so long that the strawberries are good for. So it's really important to do it. But yeah, the loans, the mortgages, they go to zero when you pay them off. And that's what the strategy is designed to do. Boom, pay it off. Connor McCarthy, 5960. Lynette, is part of why you say the system died in 2008 because the financial industry effectively became nationalized after all of the bailouts. And why else would you say that? Number one, yes, but also the system that we were used to, that's when QE started. That's when they also, I mean, we're good? Okay, because we don't see us. Okay. We're still live. Okay. So, kind of. Okay. But the reason why I say the system died in 2008 is because of all of the extraordinary measures that the central banks have taken since then. And then the fact that in January, Bitcoin was magically born in 2009, and then quantitative easing, free money printing, was born in March. So it was then that they started to develop the next iteration of money that they wanted it to be in their image so that they have even more control. Because this stuff, here I'll use dollars, but it creates limitations because it's, well, this happens to be a $100 bill. So 100.00, and maybe you can pull those zeros out a little teeny bit more.
Yeah.
But this is a debt instrument that does not pay or charge interest. They're going to change that with the digital system. But this is why I say the system died, because all of their old tools did not work anymore. They created a whole bunch of extraordinary tools that have now become their norm,
Right.
the common thing, because once they create something, they can't take it away. So that's one big reason. And the other big reason is because I've watched them develop the new system, as we all have. And if you've been watching me, you've been watching them develop that new system as well. And we have a choice. We're either going to have a say in the new system, or we're not going to have a say in the new system. If we don't have a say in the new system, whose benefit is that system going to be in?
Definitely not ours. Yeah. And to kind of talk on your point of what they had to do for these extraordinary measures in 2008, the first time that they had their experiment called QE, it was called QE1. Now we're on QE
bazillion.
So yeah, how many times have they just kind of hit the button to try and pump life back into the system that has no life left in it, right? It's just and every time they do it, it becomes less and less effective.
Yes,
so
that's 100% accurate.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how the Federal Reserve was, definitely able to, what do they call it? Kick the can a little bit, if you want to say that.
Kick the can or paper over
or
it.
Paper over
right?
it, yeah. But we're
That
at the
didn't
time.
fix any of the problems, did
no,
they?
No, yeah. I think it was just part of extending that timeline until they could have something in place definitively to replace the system that died. And it's been built brick by brick, really, since then. This
algorithm by algorithm.
Yeah.
But and now they're doing all of these experimentations, and you guys have to realize, just like banks can really do anything they want. We saw what happened in 2008. Nobody went to jail.
Nope.
Because they had safe harbor. It was legal. And all of this experimentation that they're doing today, they have safe harbor. It's legal. They can blow up the entire system. In fact, they know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
They want it to happen because we need a big enough crisis to push people all the way over into this new system. So that's why I said that it died, and you confirmed it. And it's just a fact. It doesn't matter. I don't make this stuff up.
Right.
I just acknowledge, yep. And I mean, I was getting ready to retire. I was living in a little 2-bedroom condo, right? All I had to do was lock the door and off I go on my adventures. Here I am today, all these years later, and now I have no plan on retiring at all. As long as I can talk and think, I guess I can do my job.
There's always work to do, right?
There's lots of work to do.
Yeah.
So Stephen Hamlin 1015 says, Nixon said that he was temporarily removing us from the gold standard, but he got impeached, and he should have been impeached. It was kind of funny about that period of time, because obviously I was alive then, and I actually was going to school during that period of time in England.
Oh,
and it was very interesting because everybody wanted to know about Nixon and what was going on with Nixon and Watergate and that whole scandal. And yeah, he should have been impeached. So, but he wasn't going to put us back on the gold standard anyway. There was no way to do it, because at the end of the day, we no longer held all of the gold for foreign governments that we once held prior to World War II, in the period between World War I and World War II, where we ended up holding more gold and having the largest and strongest military. That's the big reason why we became the world reserve currency.
Yeah.
Right. But that has definitely changed. He wouldn't have put us back on the gold standard. What politician wants restrictions? That's why it's so important that we get it back in the system to create that discipline and those restrictions and to have our say. So can I have the next question, please? PGF 45. At what GSR would you start swapping silver for gold? I wouldn't. I mean, everybody gets to do whatever it is that they want, and GSR gold silver ratio is what they're asking. I am a strategist. I am not a short-term trader, and I don't really care about swapping silver for gold.
Right.
I know what my current cost of living is and what my 2 children's current cost of living is. And so my silver position is based upon those areas where silver is the best use. And it's based upon both of my children and myself. Then I don't have to worry about it because I have everything, right? I have my food, water, energy security, barterability, which for me is primarily silver, but not only silver. Wealth preservation, which for me is primarily gold, but not only gold. Community is arguably the most important thing because it takes a village.
Yeah.
I can't do this can't do any of this by myself, right? We are not islands. We were not designed to be islands. We're designed to come together in community, share the gifts that we've been given, and support each other's. For me, and you know this because you've known me for a long time now. So if it's not true, feel free to say it. You won't be in jeopardy if you do it. But I do strongly believe that the best relationships help each other be the best that they can be. And not what I think is your best, what you think is your best. And not what you think is my best, what I think is my best. Yeah. And that's why bringing together the gifts that we've been given enable each one of us to, maybe even exceed some limitations that we might have put on ourselves.
Yeah. That's why I can't wait for the lives down in the auditorium, because we'll be able to have all different types of just ideas and all different types of perspectives coming together. And I really do think that's the most important part of community, because there's, we can only think
diversity.
In diversity, yes. Because we can only think of so many things, and all it takes is for somebody to come in and say, well, what about this?
Exactly.
And it changes the whole thing. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, really, my work, hopefully it's what I try and do, is I'm trying to get you to look at things a teeny weeny bit differently.
Yeah.
I know that if you're talking to people out there, that's what you're trying to do. That's why we do the paradigm shift, a pair o' dimes, because we're trying to help you look at things a little differently. Because when you do, it's amazing what you see. Like this dime card with a let's see, what is the date? Oh, this happens to be 1964. It is a silver dime, 90% silver, and this is a new dime. On the day we bought it, this one dime, silver dime, cost us $6.72. You can still buy, buddy, can you spare a dime? You can still buy a cup of coffee or a very inexpensive meal with this dime, the silver one.
Right, the
what do
real
you do
one.
with the other one? So utilize these paradigm shift cards because you guys are the army out there anyway. But yeah, I don't really start swapping. I just define what I'm trying to accomplish, and then it's the right tool for the job. And then I'll have to worry about it.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about it. Too busy. Let's see. And Connor McCarthy, 5960. Lynette, I know how inflation is a bad thing, but confused why then deflation is also bad, at least according to the media and financial world. Can you explain what deflation is and why it's so bad or not? Deflation are prices coming down. So it could be if the stock market falls, that's deflationary. If the real estate market falls, that's deflationary. Personally, if things cost you less, but you're making the same amount of money, that is not a bad thing. It expands your ability to purchase goods and services. But for central banks, it's a bad thing when the markets go down because then people spend less. And their central bank's job is not to fix inflation or even fight inflation. It's to control the rate and speed of inflation. And with deflation, there's only one way to do that, and that's with inflation. So that's this, where they're now devaluing the currency, pushing prices up so that if you don't understand what's happening, I mean, look at the stock market. There's my retirement. Oh, isn't that a good thing that the stock market just keeps going up? Except the stock market is extraordinarily and extremely overvalued.
Right.
And that income and wealth division between the haves and the have-nots is way wider than it even was in 1928 before the Great Depression. So what do you think is coming up in our future? Because we're seeing insiders get out. We're seeing risk transfers happen all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's your retirement. I mean, hey, let's legalize private equity. We can see that you can't get out of it. And
Yeah.
then whose fault is that you really have no money for retirement?
Yeah.
So deflation is an implosion of prices dropping down. You can only fight deflation with inflation, which is the value of your currency going down. Oh, you can do it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
That's what you got to do.
Here you go. You got to do it. You got to do it. And there's only one way to fight deflation. That's with inflation, and only one way to fight inflation, and that's with deflation. And central banks use interest rates to
Right.
reflect that. So they increase interest rates when they want to create deflation. Fewer people borrow and spend. They lower interest rates to create inflation. More people borrow and spend. But quite honestly, financial conditions have been loosey-goosey this whole time since 2008.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because you're right. That's really the only tool that the Federal Reserve has is interest rates. That's their golden sword that they try to use to control everything. But then it goes back to, well, what is interest? I know we talk about interest rates, but interest itself is just a term for when you take on debt.
The price of money.
Right. The price. And so then they're telling you money is debt because all they can do is play with the interest rate. So.
Well, that's a really good point. But all you have to do, if you're in the U.S., pull out a bill.
Yeah.
And it says Federal Reserve note. Federal Reserve is a private corporation and a note is a debt instrument. So we don't even hide it.
No.
I don't really see that same thing on some of these other bills. But aren't we all told that it doesn't matter? These are all notes.
Yeah.
And a note is a debt instrument.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just interesting how, you know, I think some people have this idea of the Federal Reserve as being this kind of, you know, government entity in a high tower, and they're here to help everybody and save the world. And I'm like, well, all they really do is tweak a dial on interest rates, and you know that only works for so long, as you know.
And that's where we're at.
Right. Stagflation becomes a thing.
Right. Where inflation, the cost of everything is going up, but wages are stagnating. And so with these inflation numbers that are coming in, right, that hurts morale, that hurts confidence, and this is a con game.
And then the emperor has no clothes.
Exactly.
So it all ties back to what we talked about at the beginning. So I think it's just, you know, it's simple. It's such a simple concept, and it's like, I don't know, our job is to just get people to understand it, I guess, in the simplest way possible.
And remember too, if you ask a question and we did not do a good enough job explaining it, that's on us. That's not on you. So make sure you let Tom know that we need to do a better job, and we will. We won't be insulted by it, right?
All right. Yeah,
you're happy to answer any question.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love answering questions and learning more. So the only way you get to learn is if you get challenged with something new.
That's it. So Troll Hayton Forge, and if I am butchering anybody's name, I probably am. I'm sorry. When will it happen? Year after year, it will crash, but it will collapse, but nothing happens. Oil is all-time high. That's where I make my money. Energy. Yeah, well, it is happening. This is not something that we're waiting for. This is everything that you're seeing is typical about what happens as we transition from one currency into the next. Do the powers that be want you to have private wealth that they can't inflate away? Why would they want that? You are, and I mean, what are we? Are low value human capital?
Right. Yeah.
That's what we are. We're low value human capital. How dare you think that you have a right to any of the fruits of your labor? No, your job is to feed the beast and feed the machine. I don't believe any of that. But that's the belief that's out there. So when will it happen? It's happening. It's happening. And that you can't see it means that I have not done my job as well as I could, would, will, or should. So stay tuned. Energy, yeah, you think that's not going to have an impact on confidence? This is a con game. Make no mistake about it. And if you don't believe that, there's this bridge in Brooklyn we could talk about. I don't really own it, but I'd sell it to you anyway. I actually ethically couldn't do that. But you're being sold a bill of goods. You can buy it. It's up to you. I can't control that. And guess what? Even if you don't believe me and you happen to be walking by my property and you're hungry, I'd still let you pick a pomegranate. We have to. That's our obligation.
Yeah.
You know, we're asking people to admit that what they've been taught to believe as truth their entire lives is a lie, and they don't want to. And I don't blame them. Yeah.
So it's hard. It's a hard thing to have that, you know, paradigm shift, going back to our dime cards. You know, it is. It's not simple to, I guess, what was it that I think it was like maybe Mark Twain had said, it's easier to actually fool somebody than to have them understand that they've been fooled.
Right.
So, but I do actually think, talking about energy and the price of oil, you know, being at all-time highs.
Wait a minute. It was just under $100 a barrel today. At least it was earlier today.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's a great price, right? But it also goes back to, because the United States has that world reserve currency status, things like energy need to be bought in US dollars. So if the US dollar is super duper duper strong, against these other currencies, but that means that they've just lost that much more purchasing power. What was it that they had to do back in the 80s when the dollar got too strong against all the other currencies at the Plaza Hotel?
Oh, are you talking about, the Plaza Accord is what you're referring to.
Right. And that was the government saying, okay, we'll buy a bunch of foreign debt.
Well, look at, for anybody to think that these central bankers and these governments are not inside of these foreign exchange markets. Again, there's a bridge in Brooklyn that we could talk about. They are constantly in there tweaking. So buying their currency or selling their currency based upon whether they want to look weaker or stronger against, but it's all an illusion.
Yep.
None of that is real. You want something real? How about 33 different global users, 36 different global users? Most functionality of anything on the planet. And what that means is the broadest base of buyers, completely out of the control, the physical, completely out of the control of governments and central banks.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a good place for it to be.
Yeah.
Right? It's really what we want. And Robert 4222, good afternoon. What do you think will happen on 7/13/26 when and if the USG puts a tariff or floor price on silver? Well, I think that all of these are frankly just a whole lot of manipulation.
Yeah.
A floor price on silver, the cost of pulling gold and silver out of the ground pretty much does that already.
Yeah.
Right? But it's also when you stop and you look at where it's used. Do you think that silver at 70 or 80 or even $100, do you think that that's real for a diminishing asset?
Not even close.
Not even close. And remember, it was 2020, I think it was 2020, when SLV had to change their prospectus because they couldn't get their hands on enough silver to make their baskets for that ETF.
Right.
But hey, silver, sure, it's not even worth 100. It's a joke. It's a joke. So what do I think will happen on July 13th? I don't know what's going to happen on any particular day.
Yeah.
They do this manipulation or that manipulation. And guess what? They can always sell a whole bunch of silver that does not nor ever will exist, just like they can do the same thing with gold.
Gold, yeah.
But you look at what they have for delivery at the COMEX for both physical silver and physical gold, and it's going down while the visible prices that we see are struggling. Why? Why aren't we seeing those prices just go up?
Right. Yeah. It's almost as if there's some sort of suppression, maybe.
Oh no. See, did you have the spring?
The spring? No, I don't know where the spring.
Did you hide it? Oh no, it's okay. I don't do it that's okay. I don't do that very well anyway. I need more practice.
With the spring. I do also think it's important to note with the question, floor price on silver. I think we should also really unpack that for what it is.
Okay.
If they do put a floor price, that just means it's a floor on a future contract that they think that the silver price will be. So it means that they're going to fix the price on a future bet. Yeah, that's the thing. The price of silver is not what is silver worth, because that'd be different. That's fundamental value. Right. The fundamental value of silver, of this, is completely separate and detached from that contract future price that you see when you pull it up on your phone or look at it on the ticker. That's a manipulated contract. So I think that's just something I just wanted to make sure Robert understood.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. That's why I like doing it with you too, because you see things a little differently,
Yeah.
or you'll pick up on something that I miss and vice versa.
Oh yeah.
And that's a good, that's why I like the diversity. I like lots of energy coming in. I think it's a good thing. And Hawkeye 61, what is the tipping point for the public to wake up in the midst of constant lying and manipulation? That's what I'm trying to figure out, because I really do think that, I mean, I hand these out all the time wherever I am, as much as I possibly can. You do too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're
Good.
going to be doing content on the dime cards too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So that's the point. If you guys can be the army and help this get this distribute, because when you do that, what kind of response do you get on these dime cards?
All the time. It's always, the main thing is, oh, I can feel the difference. You can literally feel the weight difference on one side of the card versus the other. And I think it's just like the perfect metaphor for where we're at in the currency's life cycle. It's all hollow promises. There's nothing real backing the currency. And to the point of, well, how much more lying can people take? Well, it's all just lies built on this hollow currency that has nothing backing it. And how many times can you be lied to when you don't know the truth?
Right. And that collective reasoning, just like that one viewer up there was going, well, energy is where I'm making it. Right? This is the collective vision that you're talking about with the emperor's new clothes, because nobody wants to say that the emperor is naked.
Right.
But at some point, people recognize it. So I wish I knew what the tipping point is. I don't know what that is, but we're testing it.
We're there. Yeah. It's everything's going down with the consumer confidence, and the graph earlier that you showed with trust in the government, the public trust in the government.
It's happening. Yeah. And we recently had the absolute worst numbers on consumer confidence than we've ever had since they started tracking it going back to 1952, because after all, what was also happening during that period of time? Oh, there was a lot of consumer credit that was being built.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to recognize it. And Nathan Patel, 1786, do you trust Battle Bank's unallocated, not segregated gold accounts? Well, I do trust Rick. I trust Rick Rule. I like Battle Bank. But quite honestly, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. So they have to be segregated. If you're holding it in a private vault, which is how I hold mine because I'm such a visible, person, I hold it in a private vault in my name, and I can actually walk to that vault if I needed to. So and Daryl Graves.
yeah, no comment on that one.
Okay, I just met with Lynette this morning. Please, someone tell her I tested my theory and I was correct. She will understand. I do. And yes, I did meet with Daryl this morning. And that's very interesting. And Daryl has another question. Lynette, who and how are the spot prices controlled? What actually makes the prices go up? Amount of sales, who, what, or how much purchases do you know? Well, who, what, and how are the bullion banks. And please feel free to jump in on this because I know you study this a lot too. But the bullion banks, like the London, they meet once a day and set the prices.
Right.
So that's a stated price, whether you realize it or not. Now, the COMEX exchange, those are contracts. There's no limitation to how many contracts can go out there. And do I know who, what, et cetera? Well, quite honestly, the Bank for International Settlements does track some of that. But the problem is that they always change the formulas, and not just the BIS, but all of these guys. They change the formulas so things look closer to the way that they want them to look. So quite honestly, with the derivatives, nobody could really tell you.
Right.
I can tell you it was, I believe it was 2009 when I said, well, wait a minute, We just now went to $1 trillion deficit. And if you go back and you look on the surplus and deficits, I'm making notes here because we're going to try something. Surplus, deficit, if I can remember why I'm making these notes to myself, so that I can pull these things up easier and faster when we're in here talking.
Yeah.
But if you take a look at it, at that point, we had just gone to $1 trillion deficits, but we were servicing 13 trillion in debt. Now it's 40, but then it was 13 that they were admitting to. And I said, well, wait a minute, we really haven't been too bad on these deficits. Why are we servicing so much debt? It was compounding interest then.
Oh, yeah.
But I also went into the Bank for International Settlements. And at that point, I saw it with my own eyes, did not know print screen at that time. But for every 1 ounce of gold physical that you see in my hand, there were over 62,000 digital ounces of gold. The market doesn't read those as digital ounces of gold. The market reads those as ounces of gold or ounces of silver in those contracts. So I don't know what I can verify just by my eyes, because unfortunately I didn't do the print screen. 62,000 to 1, and that's only gotten worse, but you can't see it. So there are a number of different places where you can see the manipulation. Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the OCC, runs a quarterly report on derivatives just in the FDIC insured banks. I don't think until it implodes, I don't think we're ever going to really know what that imbalance looks like. But that's shifting. And that's the point that I've been trying to make over the past almost year and a half, that we are going from a paper-driven price discovery to a physical demand price discovery. These things don't happen easily or quickly. So it's really hard, but it's the bullion banks. In the US, we're more contract driven. In Europe and certainly in Singapore, certainly the Asian countries are more physically driven.
And how much do you remember does it cost for a bank in the US to suppress the price of silver and gold?
About $150 for a full contract, which is about 500 ounces. It is 500 ounces of gold or 5,000 ounces of silver.
Oh.
And if it's a central bank, they don't even have to go out and earn that money.
They
just push
a button and it does it. So yeah, I think that is actually interesting too. You know, what makes the prices go up? I would say them easing off of that manipulation for one reason or another might have an effect too.
They might, or what's happening right now are the entities that are standing for delivery. That makes it kind of scarier and scarier.
Yeah.
Because if we get enough of them that stand for delivery, which means they go, send me the silver, send me the gold, that's standing for delivery, then it's going to be really obvious that the emperor has no clothes, that they do not have enough gold or silver to actually fulfill those deliveries. And what they've done in the past and what they're going to try and do in the future, so we'll see if it can stick or not, is to pay a little bit of a premium and pay it out in cash instead of the metals.
Right.
Now, whether or not how much they can get away with that, I guess we're going to find out.
Yeah.
So I wish I could be more specific than that, but these things are not made for us to understand them. They're made for just the opposite, for us not to understand it.
To be obfuscated and hard to understand. So you just say, well, somebody smarter than me has it figured out, so I'll just go along with whatever they're saying.
That's it.
Right.
And J Hawkeye 61, how much will AI impact many of these younger people in high-level tech jobs? Will that be a wake up and smell the coffee moment? And that's what I'm thinking. It is being a wake up and smell the coffee moment. You know, and there are other problems that come from this too, because you need those people in entry-level positions and you need enough time to gather enough experience.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I can see AI as a tool, but let me tell you, there are times when I use it and I'll read it back and I'll go, that's not right. Well, if you don't know whether or not something is right or wrong, then you can't really guide it.
Right.
And so, these lower level positions, I have a lot of concerns about this, not just short term, because short term, I think the younger people are seeing the American dream lie, and not just the American dream lie. You have the counterparts all over the world. You have the lay down generation in China going, well, why should I do that if this is all I'm going to get for it, right? Not thinking that it's worth it. But it's also all of the talent that you haven't developed. And at some point, us older people go away. And then it's dependent upon the younger people like you to come in and take our place. I'm not going to create the revolution, but I can tell you what my experience is that I've lived through, and it's really what I'm trying to do with you, future-proofing this and trying to take my experiences and put them on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And that only happens with enough time and interaction. So if we're missing that, because these people aren't even getting into entry-level positions. And frankly, I'm only as good at what I am because I've done it my whole life.
Yeah.
I have some very serious concerns.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. And, you'll have people that will say, well, AI, it's not really as good as people say it is, because, I'll agree. We're talking in the stock market. A company can literally just slap AI on its earnings call and boop, like you said, to the moon, right? It just, and that is, like a .com bubble kind of concern. I think it's just another indication of where we're at in the currency's life cycle. They just need that market to continue to run up.
Yeah, they have no choice.
You're right. There's no other choice that they have. So it's optics at that point. If the president could say, well, look at how good the stock market's doing. What are you talking about? There's no problem. Everything, look at your 401k, look at your pensions, look at all. But then underlying, well, the 401k isn't yours, right? It's in
these very volatile and risky markets at very high levels.
At very high levels, right? So there's that side to it where I agree, people will say, well, AI doesn't really have this use. But I think it's not about what the consumer so much wants to say about it, because still look at how much money is being poured into it through private equity. And I think it's because they want to get to the point where AI is taking those entry-level jobs, those people that were once paid to code a website or whatever. Well, if you can get
or even dealing with clients.
Right, dealing with people,
Just to have a machine.
Yeah.
That, if you think you have it hard now because you're talking to India or you're talking to somebody in South America and they don't understand the nuances of the language,
right?
Well, I don't know. You think the AI is going to do better? Maybe. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah. But that's all part of it too. I think why is there such a push into the AI? And again,
it's a distance.
Yeah, exactly.
See, that's the other thing. Being my age, I remember when most of the businesses out there were mom and pops.
Yeah.
Now, if I was unhappy about something, I would go and I would talk to the decision maker.
Yeah. And
the decision maker wanted you to come back. And so they would do whatever it was that they needed to do to make things okay. Because things happen. They do.
Yeah.
You can try as hard as you want. Things will happen.
Sometimes people lose an important piece for the office.
Yeah. Oh, we had found the best piece for Kenneth's office because, he is a cowboy, right? And this piece, it was like we were building all of his office around it. And they, unfortunately, I think it was on Etsy or it was on eBay or one of them. And they were moving at the same time right after we ordered it, and they lost it. So now I have to see if I can find it again because it was perfect for him. Perfect.
But no, I get what you're saying though. Yeah, things happen. And
what did I bring it today? Oh, we didn't bring it in here.
Oh,
did
no.
We?
Nuh-uh.
Well, we'll go on the social media because Ashley took an image of it. Yes. It's actually was a gold mining pan from the 1880s. So that's going to go with the dirt originally still
Original
on
dirt.
there.
There you
Original dirt. And that's going to go in his office when
Yeah,
we
that's
start hanging
awesome.
things
Thank
up.
you.
Anyway.
But yeah, like you said, though, making that distance where who can you complain to if it's all AI? And again, the slide that you showed at the beginning of the live, they're considering humans as lesser value capital. So, I mean, you've got to look at it from the perspective of they can just keep printing money because we're at the end of the currency's life cycle. It doesn't mean anything, and they can push as much of it into AI as they want to. It's a much
Well, you know what's also kind of interesting, since we're talking about AI and we're talking about debt, and these hyperscalers, right, who never did anything with debt because their cash flow was really sufficient to cover their growth, et cetera, which is what we do here as well.
Right.
We don't take on debt to expand.
Right.
Right. Well, they've all been taking on massive amounts of debt to expand. And people are not aware of that because they're used to them just not having that debt. So, yeah, I can see I see so many problems coming up. But, yep. Can we have the next question, please? And Emma Dupree asks, is gold manipulation a counterparty risk? Absolutely. Because it's something that you don't have control over, but it controls what you see. That's absolutely counterparty risk because they're lying to you, right? So anytime you're being lied to, whether you've signed something or you're looking at it, that's all counterparty risk because it disables your ability to make educated choices that puts your best interest first. So yes, absolutely. And from Seed Homestead 252, what do you think is going to happen to Social Security when the reset happens? You know, honest to goodness, kind of pretty much what's happening now. It doesn't buy you enough. And so they'll raise the Social Security that they're giving you, but it's never at the same rate as the inflation. And so, it doesn't matter. Here's my $10 trillion Zimbabwe note. I'm a trillionaire in Zimbabwe. It doesn't matter how much of this I have. It matters what I can convert it into.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, if you're dependent upon Social Security, all the more reason for you to get that community around you. Food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. Get it done. And if you're depending upon the government handouts, that's not going to put you in the best possible position. A sound money strategy with you as your own central banker and surety in all of those mantra areas means you live to fight another day. Got to do it. And Jeffrey Hadley from Facebook asks, tell me, what's going on in the bond markets? Well, bonds are dead. The 2-year, the 10-year, the 30-year, the yield is what you are agreeing to be paid for loaning that money to a government agency. And the maturity, 2-year maturity, 10-year maturity, 30-year maturity. Somebody asked about this, if you could explain it. So the interest that you pay on the debt is what investors are requiring to take that risk. Physical gold and physical silver do not pay you interest because there's no counterparty risk for it. You don't have to take that risk. But the yield is how much you are being paid to take that risk. And if that yield is 5%, well, then you're risking the 95% for that little pickup in 5%, which makes no sense to me. But everybody's got to do what they're comfortable with. And with the bond market and the yields spiking, this is okay. Number one, that means that the bond investors think that there's more risk in the markets, and so they are pushing up interest rates. If you want me to loan you money, you're going to have to pay me this much No longer do I want those lower rates. It's not enough. I'm taking on too much risk. But the impact that those increased rates have on all of the bonds out there at a stated interest rates that have already been given, it means that the market value of those bonds go down. So like I've shown you in the past, at the FDIC and those banks, all of that debt, that 15 years where we had zero interest rate policy, all of the debt that those banks, including central banks, accumulated during that period of time as the interest rates have gone up, they're all underwater, which means that if there is a run on the bank, you have a whole bunch of people say, I want my cash now, then the banks would be forced to sell this underwater debt. And it would be obvious that the emperor has no clothes, that there's not enough money in the diff balance to cover all of that, all of those runs on the bank. So the interest rates, to put it simply, those interest rates typically are different. 2 years would have a lower interest rate than 10 years. That would have a lower interest rate than 30 years, because in theory, the longer you have to hold that debt, the riskier that debt is, because you don't know what's going to happen between now and 30 years out.
Right.
But those interest rates already have an impact on all of the debt that's been pushed out there. That's a big problem.
Yeah.
And all of that debt that you did get at ZIRP, zero interest rate policy, and now has to roll over at a much higher interest rate, it's a huge, huge problem. So the bond market is telling you that the risk has grown ginormously, and oil somewhere in the vicinity of $100 a barrel. Well, all of that inflation is now, just now we're starting to see it trickle through. This all means much higher inflation rates and lower confidence rates, which means we're cooked. Comments?
Yeah.
Comments?
Well, I mean, yeah, I would say, when the biggest thing that I look at with the bond market too is, I mean, you explained beautifully, when the interest rates go up on bonds, it's because the government as well is saying, okay, we need to entice people to come to the table. There's not enough buyers at our bond auctions. So they're saying, hey, look over here, we can give you way more. Isn't this attracting you now? But if other countries are realizing, not even just locally, but if other countries are realizing the emperor has no clothes, at a point, it doesn't matter how high they put that interest rate. If they're like, hey, we don't want that stuff. And doesn't that then come down to the buyer has to become the Federal Reserve?
Well, exactly. And, this is not something new.
Right.
The Federal Reserve actually started buying, and you can go on the Fed and just put in the holdings of the treasuries and you'll see it for yourself. They actually started buying US government debt I think it was 2000. Yeah. So it was already back in 2000, 26 years ago, that we were not attracting enough global buyers of our debt. And that's only gotten worse. And nobody ever talked about it until 2009.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so imagine with all that debt that the government has, that they're trying to find buyers for, if the buyers don't come to the table, then the Federal Reserve just has to.
This is the buyer of last resort.
Yeah. They'll just digitally expand that ledger and press that magic button to print trillions of more dollars. And well, couldn't that very well be a runway into hyperinflation as well?
Well, absolutely, because the only reason why we aren't seeing the hyperinflation yet is because the public still trusts this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? That's why that confidence and inflation expectations and all of that, the de-anchoring. What anchors inflation?
Right.
Confidence.
It's the confidence.
That's it.
And it's interesting they call it the anchor. Yeah, the inflation anchor, You mean people's perception
That's it.
of what this stuff can or cannot do or buy?
Yeah.
And the more people realize, like you said, well, hey, I have no prospect of being able to make my life better. I'm going to need to make 5 times more of this stuff just to keep the same standard of living as I thought I had when I was younger. That really does show where we're at the end of the currency life cycle.
And how easy is it? I mean, we have multiple trillion-dollar companies. Okay, is it that that company is really worth trillions of dollars, or if the dollar is worth that much less?
Yeah, that much less.
Thank you.
You did a lot of
Yep.
printing today, so yours is empty. But
I know.
don't worry, I got some on my.
Until you don't. Yeah. So that's what's going on with the bond market. It's warning you that something very nasty this way comes. It's that simple. And Trottleton Forge, what was your latest purchase to your lovely home with all beautiful items? And
Maybe themes? I don't know.
hmm?
Maybe it meant to say themes. I don't know. Yeah.
Actually, you know what? We got a yuzu plant, a yuzu plant.
Oh.
Well, a yuzu tree. And it's not quite planted yet, but I was just up at the Bug Out this past weekend, which was so nice. I love it up there.
Yeah.
I really do. It's my happy place. So a yuzu tree, and Chef Jason is very excited about
Yeah, I
that
bet.
because right now I guess he has to buy it. And so that was my latest purchase, and I got to see it this weekend. And Ernest DeBella, rock and roll hoochie coo. Are any of the Magnificent Seven firms over leveraged with corporate bonds to pay for AI centers like the WPPPS Nuke Energy back in the 80s? Or are they so rich they are immune? I don't think anybody's immune.
Yeah.
And that really is. Can you grab that one for me? Because I really haven't quite had a chance to take a look at that. So I will. I think that's really a good question. Let's see how much these hyperscalers, how much debt they've taken on. Yeah. Are they immune? I don't think anybody's immune or anything is immune.
Yeah.
But we'll see. And Silver Serpents 505 asks, you say pre-33 because it's collectible and exempt from confiscation, but what about modern collectibles like the Perth Lunar Series and other gold rounds? Well, if you can hold them inside, and I'm pretty sure you can hold the Perth Lunar Series inside of an IRA, then it's classified as monetary gold. So that's really how I gauge what I'm going to buy. Because if you can hold it inside of there, I just don't trust it. That's where they'll do the easiest. If the government should choose to do an overt confiscation,
Right.
that's just easy pickings. Because I can't imagine any administrator going, "Oh no, government, we're going to have to stop you right there." So yeah, no, the gold rounds, the Perth Lunars, that's a different classification. They aren't collectible because the entity says it is. Franklin Mint says it is, or Perth Mint says it is. It's
the legal definition, really, of it. Again, that's any gold that was minted after 1933 falls under the definition of bullion. And that legal definition, at least in the United States, I don't know, maybe it's different over in Australia, but in the United States, it's considered a financial asset. So
excuse me. See, it's true. I just sneezed.
so and to your point too, actually, about gold held in an IRA, one thing that's interesting about it is all these depositories, all of these companies that are IRA companies, they have what's called a charter in order to operate.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Good point.
And that charter is held by the government. So what's the likelihood that any of these companies or any of these depositories or any of these banks are going to tell the government no if the government holds the right for them to operate as a company?
Yeah.
So, but
good point.
But
Very
yeah,
good point.
So that's one thing to really consider when it comes to, at least me personally, when I think about where my wealth is and how it's operating for me. I want to know, well, is it really mine? Who has the final say on it? But yeah, so the Perth lunar series and things like that, those could be considered commemorative maybe, and they might be a special run of a mint of gold.
But it's not the mint that gets to dictate it.
Right.
It's a very good point. Yep. And from Seed Homestead 252, should I be trying to get my local butcher to let me barter silver for beef now so we get a barter system set up, or should I keep my silver and hope I can barter later? How about a combination of the two?
Yeah.
You can introduce that thought to them and maybe share a dime card with them to help them understand why it's important. But didn't you use gold for a down payment on the car? And I think somebody asked about that. Can you go into that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I love the idea of being able to go to a butcher and give them some silver for some meat. There's nothing like a local butcher too. They have the best meat, better than stuff you'll get in the grocery store.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I went about a month ago, actually, coming up on a month, I wanted to buy a new vehicle, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna see and put this into real life action. I want to take gold, and I want to have some dealership here in Arizona take my gold as down payment for the car, for the truck. And it's on our socials. It's on the Twitter. It's on the TikTok and the Facebook, and it's on YouTube too. I found a dealership out here that my salesman, I talked to him. I said, look, this is what I want to do. I've got X amount of ounces of gold. Will your dealership take it as a down payment towards this truck? And he said, let me go ask my manager. And apparently when he asked his manager said, are you kidding me? Of course we'll take it. So at least the manager understood the value that's there, the utility that's there. And so I was able to say, okay, here's the gold. And I got an email receipt the next day for that, that cash value. And it was actually the receipt it says cash on it. So it didn't even say that it was gold, which I thought was cool, but yeah, so I would say absolutely, why not both? Use a little bit now and have that system set up and save some of your gold, obviously, for that barter position.
Silver, right? Obviously, silver. Right. But yeah, if you can establish it now, why not? Why not? And Warner H is for Gov. If you have $2 to $3 million, you will have nothing after the reset. If you have $500,000 in gold or silver, you will be well off. Years and years ago, this is way before your time, I used to read a lot of Richard Russell. Some of you might be familiar with his work. And he always said, if you have 1,000 ounces of gold, you will always be wealthy. And I agree. If you have 1,000 ounces of gold, you will always be wealthy. And Gilly Audio says 1971, last time the dollar had any real value. Actually, I would say it was even earlier than that, to be honest with you, because they didn't take us off the gold standard in 71. That was the final cut.
Right.
They started taking us off the gold standard in 1913 when they legalized the Federal Reserve against the Constitution. That's really when that started. So, and in fact, we had a question about that last week. I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but I just recorded something on that this morning.
Oh, nice.
So it'll be coming out pretty soon, where you'll get a chance to see how they did it and got away with it. It's just really pretty disgusting. And Karen Cousins, 1721. And I will say this, the dollar today, I can still take, well, not that one, but I can still take this bill and I can still buy gold or silver with it. And I can still buy goods and services. So at this moment, it still has some level of purchasing power. It's just when all confidence is lost in it, then you'll see that change very rapidly.
When
How
is
do
this
you
one
go
from?
bankrupt? Slowly at first and then quickly.
Yeah. When is this one from?
This, I think there's two in here
Oh, cool.
because, yeah, there is. So if you look here, like this one is a 1977 series. So this was after
Yeah.
they took us off. And this one is a 1969 series.
Mm.
So this is from 1969. You can see what that looks like. And this one's from 1971 after we were already off the gold standard, right? And look at how, I mean, can you can you tell the difference between one or the other? Seriously.
No. It looks exactly the same
And
as even that
and
one.
this is the gold certificate, right?
So it's kind of like
mean,
they knew what they were doing
Yeah.
when they started slowly taking that gold out of the money. I mean, that's all what's all about, right? It's about perception management. That's how they've
And
done this.
Even I'm going to see if we can get on the new dime cards. We just always get the Eisenhower dime and then the new Eisenhower dime, because that's what they do. They make it look like nothing has changed. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah, perfect.
When in reality, everything has changed, right? You can look on the edge, but look at how much they look alike, right? You wouldn't know the difference, just like you couldn't tell the difference in those two bills.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And Karen Cousins, 1721. Can you find someone to buy your gold and silver after the reset? I have had problems in selling before the reset, but have sold some to a friend. Well, this is really kind of the point in making sure that you're working with a reputable dealer as well, and one that is set up, because I know that some of the smaller mom and pop shops have been, with the big run up in the prices, the spot prices of both gold and silver, they've had some challenges making those conversions because they don't have access to the capital. Right. But when you're dealing with somebody like Zang International, where we have it set up that that's just not an issue for us. So I would say part of your community needs to include someone like us. And frankly, I think we're the only ones like us out there, because we understand currency life cycles. You know, I don't know anybody else that's been studying it since 1987. And I talked to some very brilliant people that I learned stuff from on a regular basis. And yet they seem to be a little blind by a currency's life cycle.
Yeah.
Which I don't really know why, because we're used to knowing, you know, that you're a lot younger than me, because we know what an aging human, what that life cycle looks like. Currencies are the same.
Right.
So if you're not looking at what the problem is, because this is typically what I get. Oh, yeah, we know that, but we just don't pay attention to that. Well, but that's the problem. So if you're not paying attention to the problem, how in the world can you make educated choices?
Right. Or how could you possibly know what the solution is?
Right. So even if you are married to bullion, though, make sure you're properly diversified. So, okay, have your bullion here, have your pre-33s here. So what if I'm right and what if I'm wrong? Get yourself in a position where it really doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. You're going to be fine no matter what. So I don't see that as an issue, Karen, because we're actually executing a strategy. We're not just throwing you in something and saying, good luck, you got to figure it out. We're here for the long term. And that's the kind of relationship you need to have with somebody in this industry. Who do you trust? Test them. We have what you're going to position into on the way in, because it's based on your goals. And we also have an exit strategy. What a concept. What a concept.
Yeah.
J Hawkeye 61. Would governments ever make it illegal to hold any gold? Boy, I would think that that would be too much of a challenge since you've got 33 different users of physical gold. That's what makes it above governments and central banks. So, I mean, I think a government could try, but then you're going to confiscate all the gold, jewelry, you're going to confiscate everything. I think that would be too big of a job. I think it'd be too big of a job.
Yeah. And I think that's also part of why the strategy that we have looking at how to make sure you've just got a safety net for everything. That's what it comes down to. I mean, could the government do whatever they want to? You're right. They can, right? That they make
If
the
we
rules.
have redeemable gold in the system, then they have to
can't.
listen to us.
Yeah.
Other than that, they don't have to listen to us.
Yeah. And so what's the likelihood of the government coming down on, say, the pre-33 collectible gold and saying, well, now we're going to make an exception to the rule, because the whole purpose is they put an exception to that gold in 1933 when they did that first nationalization of gold. So that's really what it's, I think that's maybe what people need to understand. You're not just guessing when you say, hey, pre-33 is the safest form for your wealth to be held. It's not just based on she woke up one morning and said, I'm going to say that, right? It's based on a precedent.
Oh, huge precedent. There are a number of layers of protection for the pre-33 or jewelry gold or anything like that.
Yeah.
And so it is really that simple. I want the kind of gold that, because I'm executing a strategy. It's not just you buy it and you have it forever and ever and ever.
Right. It has a purpose.
It has exactly. It has a purpose. It has a function. So there's gold and then there's gold and there's silver and then there's silver. And based upon what it is that you are trying to accomplish should determine how you build your portfolio.
Yeah.
Okay. And Trollhaven Forge. Gold is for the rich. Copper is for the community, normal, hardworking man. Well, but I mean, a lot of people's wedding bands are gold and they can be of any walk of life. So yeah, gold is for, and there was a saying, I don't remember what it is. Maybe we can look it up. It's gold is for kings. Silver is for nobility, and copper is for the public, or something like that.
Gold is the money of kings.
Yeah, that's the one.
Silver is the money of gentlemen. Barter is the money of peasants.
Okay, so
and debt is the money of slaves.
Yep. Okay, so gold is the money of kings. Silver is the money of gentlemen.
Is the money of peasants.
Barter is the money of peasants. And
is the money of slaves.
Debt is the money of slaves. They have made us all slaves, right? But what the gold and the silver do is they take you out of that category. And guess what? If we have redeemable gold, you can control the government because you can create restrictions. What a concept. They're supposed to work for us anyway, aren't they?
That's what they get paid for, I guess.
Right. And Patriot Zero, where can I buy a dime card? Call us. You want to put the number up there? Talk to a strategy specialist. If you're a client, you get the first one for free, but then all the others are at our cost. So you too can call and get your dime cards and send them out to, everybody. We've got to create this movement. We've got to get people more aware of what sound money is and have a paradigm shift. Let's do this together. I know we can do anything.
Yeah,
we can. We're all rowing in the same direction. That energy multiplies, and just not 1 × 1 = 1. It goes up like a hockey stick. We just have to hit that point, and I know that we can. So call us. We'll give you all the dime cards you want. And Mac Richardson 7904. Hi, I just arrived. Well, welcome. Buy silver, and how soon should that be done? Oh, last year would have been good. 10 years ago would have been good. Yesterday would have been good. Today's great. Get it done. The sooner, the better. Get your strategy built, but actually get it executed. Do you have an issue too much with people building the strategy and then not executing it?
Me personally, not really. I mean, every time we have that conversation, it's, based around people knowing that there is a problem. And that's one of the things I ask whenever I talk to anybody that calls in or sets up an appointment or a meeting. I just ask them, so what was it that you saw or heard recently that led you to tell yourself, I need to change something?
Mhm.
And, that's really the important thing. So long as some people understand, a lot of people are like, I saw something that Lynette had said, or I'd heard something Lynette had said, and it just strikes that chord. And they're like, yeah, this is no longer viable. Then they understand. And it's, again, I think we never tell people, okay, well, we have a minimum of X amount of dollars. No, it could be one
It's one.
ounce,
Yeah, that actually is our minimum, is 1 ounce of silver.
1 ounce of silver.
That's how
So,
much we believe in it.
yeah. I mean, and that's really something that I think is attainable for a lot of people, to just do 1 ounce, even if you have to do it 1 ounce at a time. Look, Rome wasn't built in a day,
That's right.
but we're here to have that conversation and just talk to people about, look, this is where you're at. This is where you want to be. This is how we can get that bridge built between the gap for you. So
Awesome. Let's see. And let's see. Nicole Oates, 8932. Hi, Lynette. Do you think that I should swap my modern gold for pre-33? I'd take a few % loss doing so. Is it worth it? I have generic silver rounds. Do you think I should swap to Eagles? Okay, so I'll do the silver first. I think you're just fine with the silver in any form, including Aunt Bessie's flatware is just fine. I think that you need to do whatever you're comfortable doing, regardless of what anybody says. Personally, I can't really tell you what to do, but I can tell you what I've done for myself. Other than, 1 or 2 little ounces of bullion, so the new stuff, I just own pre-33s. I do not own any modern. Now, again, it kind of goes back to, you have to do what you're comfortable with. So even if you're choosing to hold on to the modern instead of converting it, then I would still recommend that at least for a certain portion of that, you've got the pre-33s. So if you're wrong and they do an over confiscation, okay, well, this will rise because now you have the only kind of gold that you can use in the normal marketplace. I do that because when I was coming into my own prior to 1971, you couldn't own legally more than 5 ounces of gold. But I saw my Uncle Al having at least 3,000 ounces of gold that he could use in the normal marketplace because they were all pre-33s. I mean, I can't say that I understood the implications of what I was looking at when I saw it. I was 10 years old when that happened.
yeah.
But I certainly understand it now.
Yeah.
He had 3,000 ounces that he could use in the normal marketplace. We're executing a strategy. It's not just buy and sit on gold and silver for the rest of your lives. Now, you do always want to make sure you have a foundation and sound money. But the kind of gold and silver that you have and the level of gold and silver that you have will vary based upon where we are in the trend cycle. We're at the end right now. So this is when you would need the most of it, because you're executing a strategy that is about converting it into those income producing assets that you can outlive for your retirement or for legacy building for your family, etc. Having said that, when we get to the other side, and you'll know that we're there when they put a component of gold in the system again, although if it's not redeemable, it won't really mean very much. Then you're going to start to whittle your gold holdings down, but that's because you're now converting into then undervalued assets, right? Right now, gold and silver, 100%, there's not one little doubt in my mind, severely undervalued because of rising gold prices, an indication of a failing currency. They don't want you in this, right? But as we move through this whole trend cycle and we go into the new system, hopefully we will have redeemable gold on the other side of this mess. That's what we want for our future. You want to add anything to that?
No, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with it, right? It comes down to, everybody is going to have their own, idea for their plan, for their strategy. I can say, like, I'm right there with you. My strategy is to have silver for my barter and mostly, and then pre-33 gold for my exit strategy. Like, I know, again, there's a purpose that it serves. I'm not going to sit on all of it for the rest of my life. I need to turn it into income producing assets that neither myself nor my heirs can outlive. So, yeah, I agree.
Look, the WEF said by 2030, you will own nothing.
And you'll be happy.
Well, that's what they said. I don't think that's true.
You don't think so?
No,
I don't. We're not going to be happy not having any rights to own anything.
Let me tell you, if you're leasing everything, then guess who gets to pick those prices?
Right.
That's why they say if you're in debt, you're a slave. And they want you in debt so that you don't have your choices. Right. But we want you to be your own central banker so that you retain your freedom and your choices. And you can help those around you, those people that can't see what's happening.
Yeah, that's a huge point too, actually. The more that you have inside the strategy, even if you have more than what you would need, you now can help others if that's what you want to do. Some people say no, but
yeah, and everybody's got to do what they're comfortable. Right. I can't place any judgments on anything, but what I do know is that we are stronger together than we are as individuals.
Right. Absolutely
There's
true.
Power in numbers.
Yeah.
So, and Nicole Oates 8932 says, "Hi Lynette, I'm thinking about buying a property in the Phoenix area. Would I be able to trade my silver rounds for food and other resources?" There are certainly places where you would be able to do that. Yeah. And if you are, if you're coming into Phoenix, I hope we meet, and whoever it is here that you're working with, the strategy specialist, you've certainly brought clients over to the farm.
Yeah.
So you can see what we're doing. And yeah, we would certainly swap you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. For silver, eggs, produce, whatever, or even labor. What a concept. And Lee Bear asked, should I sell some silver to buy some real estate or save my silver and purchase after the crash? Look, everybody's got to have a place to make their last stand. If you have a place to make your last stand, then you can wait. But the other part of the strategy is you buy the house with, in the US, we're really lucky because we've got 30-year fixed rate mortgages.
Yeah.
So at the same time that you're buying the house, you're going to make sure that you have enough to pay that house off when we get that overnight reset. So, Leah Bear, call us, have that conversation with the strategy specialist so that they can really understand who you are, what your goals are, where you're at inside of this cycle, and what you're really trying to accomplish. That's a blanket answer I can never give, because it's, even though the basic foundation of the strategy is the same for me as it is for you, based upon your age and your goals and your circumstances and everything else, there will be those nuances. So just call and have that conversation so that you can make educated choices that, I don't know, puts your best interest first, because that's what we really want. Even if you disagree with us, we will support your right to do so. And Patriot Girl 1 asks, the data centers are going to be the tipping point for many. Don't mess with the water. And we're already seeing that in places out by Florence, I think, that the people that live there, the data center went in and they've been sucking the water out of the aquifer so that the people have to bring in bottled water just to even have a drink or anything else. Yep, I think the data centers and the AI is a tipping point for many because we're going into a completely new system.
Right.
This is like the Industrial Revolution, but it's the digital
Yeah.
revolution.
Yeah, I agree. And part of me wonders too, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get conspiracy theory-ish, but all these data centers, I'm wondering if it's because they are going to need that computing power for if they want a digital currency, how to issue those tokens and where they're going to be issued from. I mean, because there's a lot of them being put in. Like it seems like all at once. Like there's like, okay, we're gonna build a bunch of them, and they're going up fast. But I also I had shared in our company chat, Microsoft chat, that they want to start restricting water from the Colorado River to Western states as well. So there is a component of that too. Like I think they called it the water wars. What happens when water reserves start getting divvied out for other things, and it seems like unfortunately the what did he call it, the lesser value human capital doesn't get the priority over the AI data centers for that water. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you look at the money the lobbyists are putting in, these tech companies are putting in to all of the rules.
Yeah.
Whose benefit will those rules be written for?
Right. Do you think it's going to be ours, or
they
maybe
want to
theirs?
spin it that way?
Right.
But at the end of the day, do you have $120 million to put into a midterm election? No. We are just the right size to fail. That's why you need to make sure that you have surety in all of those things. The mantra isn't just food. The mantra isn't just gold and silver. It's food, water, energy. We need those things.
Yeah.
We need those things. So we better become our biggest self-advocates and getting sound money back in the system. That's how else are you going to battle big tech? How are you going to do that?
Right. Yeah. Again, the whole system is set up with private equity having all the purchasing power right at the very tippy top. When they create a fresh new $100 bill, all the purchasing power, the height of the purchasing power that this $100 bill will ever have goes to those private equity companies right now. And what we get is when it comes down the tube and it's got all of that purchasing power already sucked out of it. And it's because this was taken out of it. That's exactly how this entire system got here. It's
right.
So you're right. Having the gold, physical, tangible gold, redeemable in some form at some level out of whatever they're coming up with after fiat, whether it's a digital currency or not.
Could be stable coins.
Yeah. Could
right?
be. It's the same thing as a CBDC.
It is. It's the difference is Amazon or the Fed. Take your pick.
Right. Yeah. And it's kind of scarier actually if it's Amazon or, your NVIDIA coin or, whatever, because again, they're just giving more power to private equity. Now you don't need the Federal Reserve because private equity can just make your money for you. They can just have all that power to say this is what it's worth and this is what you can buy with it, etc. So it's very important that we have the strategy, and it's important that we get redeemable gold out of that system because I'm with you. It's very concerning when if they can just make money to lobby for this or that or pass this rule or that rule.
They just take on debt.
Yeah.
And so then who's really paying for the lobbying is the taxpayers.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I was going to say, every time I go to the grocery store, not only is the price high because of inflation on goods and services, but then we have to put that tax on top of it. And
Oh, and the credit cards,
Yeah.
because that's kind of hidden. And
yeah.
I mean, there's so many things in there. Yeah. Yeah. And Deja Vu 0101, Lynette, what's the story about the gorgeous lamp, which I think you're referring to that
Yeah,
one
sorry.
with that one, which is actually it's from the 50s or 60s, and it's Venetian glass, and they're just these glass flowers, and it's just lovely.
Sorry, I'll like
So-
bend down to get out of the way. I'm all
Kind of, yeah, because the office we're sort of doing in not exclusively, but kind of like a mid-century modernish. So when we've got like the few little pieces, we're kind of going toward, but though he's going to be a cowboy.
yeah. I'm gonna have some,
Well, but
some great
because
stuff.
he is a cowboy,
Yeah.
and we want everybody's offices to kind of reflect who they are. Me, I'm an old antique, so
No, there's a lot of cool pieces all around the office. You know, it's like, I don't know, it's so much different now from when they were building it out and it was all empty, and now it's like coming to life. It's really
yeah,
cool.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. And Terry Murray K1I, did you mention the possibility of using the banks in the exit strategy, such as high interest savings, maybe older people with low energy for other investments? How
Mm,
did that work with bail-ins? Okay, so there's like a few different things in here.
yeah.
So the first part is the possibility of using banks in the exit strategy. And that is a possibility, because especially if they do an overt confiscation, then the banks would be tasked with gathering as much gold
Yep.
as possible, and maybe even silver as possible. So, you could bring this in and pay for your property taxes or what have you. So the banks could very well be part of that exit strategy, even if they're not used in that way, and you send it in, because it's going to have to be planned. So if you're working with us, we need to make sure that you are really aware of what the strategy is and your part in there, because as we start to exit, it's going to have to be planned,
Yeah.
or you're going to be off the train. So it's very, very important. In which case, then we would convert it into whatever that local currency happened to be into the bank. And then you need the bank to make the distribution, whether it's to buy a new piece of income producing property or pay off a mortgage or what have you. So I would say, yes, the banks are going to be part of that exit strategy. Maybe older people with low energy for other investments. So what I'm wondering, and if I'm wrong about this, please let Tom know and I'll try it another way. But if you're talking about what you have to execute for the strategy. So for example, and I could be wrong by this, so just let me know. But for example, I used to have this client that was an older woman, and boy, she just wanted rental property like nobody's business. But she did not have the ability or capacity to manage it. She didn't have children like I have my children, that if that's the direction that I'm going in, I'm putting it on their shoulders. I'm not doing
Right.
it. Right. And so in that case, then somebody that needs that income is going to need passive income, not active income. Right.
Yep.
So that would be more things like rights or dividends or things like that. So as we get closer to that execution, then you're going to have conversation with your strategy specialist, so that, and that conversation should start now, even before you're ready for it, so that they know what tools you have to work with. I wouldn't put that client in forcing her to try and manage that property.
Or
That'd be
businesses or
ridiculous.
something. Yeah.
Exactly. That'd be setting her up for failure.
Right.
Right. So, and we want to make sure that you're set up for success. So I think that's what you're asking. And how does that work with the bail-ins? If you're referring to the bank, you're using them as a pass-through. If the funds are in there and have not been distributed, and there is a bail-in, and they do not honor the FDIC insurance, right? Because that was tested, then you're going to be bailed in and we're going to have to deal with that. But you're not going to have everything in the system anyway,
Right.
right? So you might lose what you have in the system, but you'll also have all of your gold and silver that's not in the system yet. And should that happen, then you'll be able to pay it off directly with the gold and the silver.
Yeah.
Or we would have the capacity to wire. I don't know. Because I don't know that we'd have the capacity to wire to other banks.
Right.
But I don't think we can we're not,
Oh,
I don't, we have to think about how we're going to wire to the utilities or this and that and the other thing. We might want to put that think that through a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think also part of what Terry might be wondering is, okay, so let's say we're going through the exit strategy. I think it's also a matter of are they actively doing bail-ins at that time? Because I see it as there will be bail-ins during the reset while we're going through
absolutely.
that. But on the other side, there might be a normalcy that gets kind of put back in place where it says, okay, we're comfortable in having that bank as that pass through because they're not actively doing a bail-in right now. Do you think that'd be something that we could maybe be on the lookout for?
Well, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's really why we're looking at places like Battle Bank and places like that and smaller banks,
Mhm.
because you're going to have a better shot at something like, since they don't do the derivatives, et cetera,
Yeah.
as long as they've got enough gold behind them. So, if your funds, I would say that if your funds have not been transferred out, when the bail-in occurs, so timing on that, you probably don't want it left over the weekend, because
Right.
that's when they talk about doing the bail-ins
Okay.
after the
Gotcha.
close on Friday. So timing of that, just as I'm kind of thinking aloud, timing on that, we probably want the funds to hit like Monday, Tuesday, with them scheduled to go elsewhere before Friday or by
Right.
Friday.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting question. And paradigm miner. This is why Bitcoin is king. Barter can be done anywhere around the world. Gold, you got to carry it to the store and barter physical. Well, that's not entirely true. And the test for Bitcoin lies in its future, because what justifies a valuation but a trade? Is there any other functions that it performs? And that's in one place, right?
Yeah.
So
it's
correct
one-
me if I'm wrong.
No, yeah, it's got one use. And I think also the point that people don't maybe get about it is its value. The value of a Bitcoin is tied to its fiat dollar value.
Right, because you can only convert it into that.
Right. You can't
It's
you can't-
not been used as a currency, so it doesn't
Right.
buy stuff.
you can't buy something with Bitcoin. It's a bit of like a misnomer. People think, well, I could buy a house with Bitcoin. Well, no, you might find a bank who's willing to buy your Bitcoin and convert it to fiat to buy something, to buy a house with it. But there's no actual barter with Bitcoin. You're just trading it for whatever that local currency is at that time
Mhm,
and
mhm.
buying a good or service. And I mean, I don't know. The thing about cryptos for me is also, again, number one, we're not in that environment yet, but I did do I'm going to be doing a video on the Clarity Act, which
Mhm,
is all
mhm.
about things like
Right.
Bitcoin and
Right. It's to set up that structure
Right, that perimeter.
underneath. Right. And test it. Right. So we're about to go through a whole bunch of tests, and let's hope that there's no surprises in there.
yeah, I mean the analogy or the metaphor that I can use for this paradigm miner is, you got your Bitcoin. It's like you built a cabin out in the middle of the woods, right? Because you didn't want to be near the city. You didn't want to have to pay HOA fees. You didn't want to have to pay their property taxes. You didn't want to have to pay for their utilities. But then one day, the mayor of the city knocks on your door for the cabin and says, hey, great news. I've got a piece of paper here I'm going to sign and give you an address in for the city's jurisdiction. You just got annexed by the city. That's what the Clarity Act is for your digital cryptos. They're building the annexation barrier underneath that. So if you think it's king, I mean, that's great and all, but yeah, we'll find out if that king has clothes or not, right? So
we'll find out. We'll find out. And by the way, guys, when one system dies, another one is born.
Yeah.
Gold and silver is the bridge to get you from one to the next with your purchasing power intact.
Yeah.
You can't say that about anything else. I'm not saying that the cryptocurrencies or even Bitcoin is going away.
Right.
No, they've made it pretty clear.
Yeah.
However, we still don't know what the valuations are.
Right. Yeah. And what
it's still a big experiment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we won't know until it all happens. And at that point, is it even going to be Bitcoin? What if they're like, hey, you know what? Bitcoin was a great tester. We don't want that to be our thing. Then what happens to your Bitcoin? Or, you're just you're in it for the ride. So
right. I mean, they want to take us into a purely digital world. The problem is we don't live in a purely digital world.
Right.
So what are you supposed to do? Just walk around with these things on your face all the time, and that's where you live your life?
Yeah. Doesn't make any sense.
That's not. Yeah. We'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
So Soon Heaven would love to see a video with Lynn and Dr. Shiva. Well, maybe we can make that happen. And I think we still have some time. Brad Yeadon, living in Australia, love Australia. Are you able to help with the strategy for people that live here? Do you feel as though this will come to a head before the end of this year, or is the whole thing going to gradually happen over time? Yes, we can help people with strategies that live in Australia or anywhere else. And do I feel that it's going to come to, I think there are definitely some things that are going to come to a head this year. Do I think that the whole reset will this year? No, but I would not be surprised to see the central bank lose control of consumer confidence and inflation. I think I think we're going to see that in rapid succession. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, to your point, it does happen gradually over time. You can't just have, like, the thing is, the government, the central banks, all of them, they're aware of human psychological factors. They know that they can't just,
yes, they are.
Yeah, right. Like, they've got the smartest minds on planet Earth working for them, who know how people work and think and act. So you can't just have it where we wake up one morning, they're like, so by the way, there's no more fiat money and it's all digital and this and this and that. That would just be absolute chaos.
Right.
So it happens where it's replaced like bit by bit. It's almost like if you're doing a remodel on your house and they just work 1 square foot at a time, and you don't get a whole bunch of dust everywhere. You don't really realize it's happening until you turn around. You're like, oh, I've got a new kitchen. That's kind of how I look at it. It's done very slowly, but deliberately.
Oh, yeah, absolutely deliberately.
But then you've got that final point where it needs that final push. And I think that's kind of what, Lynette, you've been talking about for so long is, you can't guarantee when it'll be, but you can't say it'll be Tuesday at 9:30 in the morning where we wake up and it's like, hey, by the way, but that day we truly do believe is going to come. I mean,
it's inevitable.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
I mean, it's happened over 4,800 times.
Yeah.
Is this time different? I don't think so. I don't think this time is different at all.
Everything that we see happening right now with all the legislation being passed, all the global instability, the way that the money is working on a global scale, all of the civil unrest at home, This
Mhm.
is just a pattern that,
Mhm.
I mean, how many times has it happened in the past before?
Way over 4,800.
Right. I mean, this is, I don't know how else to put it other than, the experiment of fiat money is at its end.
Mhm.
And I mean, all things have to come to an end. Nothing lasts
Mhm.
forever. So,
Yep. Agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
And low bait, what is the ticker symbol for that public trust? Well, I don't know that it has a ticker symbol necessarily,
right.
but in the FRED, the Federal Reserve Education Department, you can put in confidence and you can put in expectations, and then you're going to see, right? Or at Pew Research, they do research all the time on that. So that's where you're going to find that. And Paul Henry KN3YQ. It really appears that chart is responding to the bond market. I'm not really sure what chart.
Yeah, I don't know if it was maybe one of the ones that you showed at the beginning,
Could be.
with like what was it? The trust in the government was on there, and then the inflation expectations was on there.
Mm-hmm.
So-
Probably. And okay, so what's going to respond to the bond market? The stock market, because the bond market was created to give you this perception that things were really balanced, right? So
Mhm.
if stocks were doing well, bonds weren't, and vice versa, right? But that's been turned on its head since 2008 as well.
Yeah.
Why aren't these working the way that they were? Because we're at the end of this life cycle. So, and the bond market, really, again, think about how much is borrowed to buy stocks into the stock market.
Yeah.
So as the interest rates go up, it's more expensive to borrow. And so the theory is that fewer people borrow, right? But it's the stock market that typically responds to the bond market. So today we had a little pullback in interest rates because oil was below 100. And so then it's risk on, baby. But when the interest rates spike up, then it's risk off, baby.
And it can switch.
And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That volatility, banks are making a heyday on this volatility.
Right,
They don't
yeah.
care if it goes up or down.
No.
They just want the volatility.
Right, because they capture every trade, little piece of that action every time.
Right. But
Yeah.
the question mark after it, the chart is responding to the bond market. So I think you're referring to the stock market, and we're in melt up mode, so nothing's going to bother the stock
Right.
market until it does.
Right.
And the good vibes 91,888. What about having gold backs, which I happen to have one right here. And Kim, by the way, I want you to keep in mind that we are doing the Sound Money Hour on the second Monday of every month at 6 p.m. Eastern. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Eastern time, because we never change and it gets confusing. And Kim is part of Goldbacks. And so she was on there. And yep, Goldbacks have a place in the cash portion. And by the way, so does digital gold, like Kinesis or Glint, with redeemable gold in there. And so you can actually transact with gold anywhere in the world that you want to. But yes, I definitely see a place for goldbacks and digital gold in the overall strategy. It makes a whole lot of sense. And there's actually a 1,000th of an ounce of gold in here. And they're starting to do smaller bills as well. But I absolutely see a place for it. So I like goldbacks. And think, and Marguerite B says, I tried, oh my goodness. I tried to get dime cards to give out around Christmas time, but Riley had sent me a contract via Acrobat to sign in order to buy 7 of those dime cards. Do you still have that same policy? I'm not exactly sure. Do you know what policy she's referring to on here?
Yeah, I believe
It's the new account.
Yeah, it would be like the agreement.
The
Yeah.
new account agreement, and then you can buy as many as you want.
Yeah. So it's just a matter of, basically stating that because we ship these things through the mail, that we're just
Yeah.
doing business together. That's all that is.
Okay. So the value of Bitcoin, but mostly discussing about the value of Bitcoin. That sounds pretty good. And I think that that's basically it for it. Is there anything else that you want to say today?
No, just appreciate you. And I really do think that the, Emperor Has No Clothes presentation was important.
I'm trying to figure out how to give people the tools to explain it, how I can explain it better,
Right.
because it really is my goal to translate financial noise into understandable language. We don't have to agree on anything. I really appreciate Bitcoiners coming in and people that
Yeah.
are into this and bringing that with you, because communities are made up of a variety of people, not just one thought. That's a cult. A cult
Right.
can only think in one way. That doesn't really serve anybody well, except maybe the leaders at the top of that cult.
Right.
We like diversity. We like conversation. And I love Tuesdays. I hope you like it as much
Yeah.
as I do.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's, a chance to, like I said, I can't wait for them to be in the auditorium. We get people in there actually in the audience. It's going to be a whole different energy,
And I think, Tom, aren't we going to look at that and see what we need to do to get that done this week, right? So we'll be once we know that, then we're going to set a specific date. And we're
Ooh.
going to go out far enough because we've got 150 seats in that amphitheater to fill.
Yeah.
So, and we'd still do it like this too. So wherever you are in the world, you'll still be able to participate.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It'll still be streamed live, but it's just going to be cool. But yeah. No, I think it's great, to have the questions come up. And again, like you said, you have no problem people challenging what we're
I
saying.
love it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've spent most of your life studying currency life cycles on some level. And I mean, yeah, I don't know. We're here to really, our work is really simple. We're just here to take a look at people's wealth, where it's at, and how we can help people get it off of the traditional fiat ledger and into their own possession. So,
yep. Become your own central bank. Become part of this very important growing community. And I don't know, what a concept. Citizens for sound money. Having money that we work for that cannot be inflated away. How about not being abused anymore?
right.
We can do it if we come together. I know we can do it. So wherever you are in this world, until next we meet, please be safe out there. Bye-bye.